If you're a wedding photographer who's starting to feel burnout from shooting every single weekend, this episode is for you. We've worked with tons of photographers who've made the pivot from weddings to elopements, and they are so glad they did. They're making more money, they have more freedom in their schedules, and they're no longer booking triple header wedding weekends just to make ends meet. Their businesses feel more aligned, their clients feel like a better fit, and they actually enjoy their work again. So in this episode, we're diving into practical tips to help you successfully pivot from wedding photography to elopement photography and why it might be one of the best decisions you make for both your business and your life.
Welcome to Stoked, the podcast that helps adventure elopement photographers hit six figures and beyond in their businesses without hustling on social media. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become an elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on helping you do the same. Are you ready to start booking out your calendar with dream couples in breathtaking locations and feeling genuinely stoked about your elopement photography business, life, and bank account? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
And today's episode is for all you wedding photographers out there that are dreaming about being elopement photographers, whether it's traveling the world and going to cool places or just working locally. There's a reason why you're dreaming about doing things differently. I want to share my backstory because I moved to Colorado to be an emergency veterinarian. And I loved photography and I started shooting weddings in Colorado and it was amazing. And I quit my job as an emergency vet because I wanted freedom. I was working overnights and weekends and holidays and I was missing out on time with family. I basically missed all the important family stuff going on. I had zero social life. I had no friends in Denver, because they couldn't count on me to do anything because I was working nights and weekends and holidays. So when I quit my job or career to be a photographer, I was shooting some elopements, but mainly weddings. And I still felt trapped by that. I still was spending every weekend, especially like in the summer, like the best months to travel and have fun and stuff like that. Like I was still working and I was still missing time with family and I still was missing time with friends. And I missed my own brother's wedding because I had already booked a wedding on the day that they planned their wedding. And I missed a vacation that my grandma had invited me to go to Europe. And it was the last big vacation that she ever took before she passed away. And she was a big traveler. She traveled all over the world, and missing that is something that I regret to this day. So weddings they still trap you. But once I completely went in on elopements, which was pretty much 2019, I had made a big pivot to just shooting elopements or cool weddings with couples that kind of wish that they were eloping. Once I went all in and I kind of started taking more control of my calendar and encouraging people to elope on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays when places were less busy, I was then able to have a social life and see my family and have weekends off, and life kind of felt more normal and like I had more freedom.
While this episode is geared to the wedding photographers that are looking to do a complete pivot, I think there'll be some nuggets in here too for some people that still want to dabble in weddings, but also want to add a couple of elopements in. We found the most success with our clients that go full on elopements, but I think there is a place, maybe a happy place for some people that can kind of get both if they structure their business in that direction.
Yeah, because even clearing up some of your weekends to do weekday elopements could be good. And there's some elopement photographers out there that, have kids and maybe weekends are still the best time for them to shoot elopements so that their partner can watch the kids or something like that. But that's the cool thing about being an elopement photographer is that you can really cater to your life better than weddings can. So, after coaching so many photographers, I hear the same things all the time about why they want to get rid of shooting traditional weddings. And a lot of it involves the long hours on a wedding day. I think we all can feel the same way about this, where like you always feel like you leave a wedding kind of not doing your best because of the timeline and the limitations, and things get behind schedule, and you're envisioning how you want the day to go and it doesn't go that way. So you kind of leave every wedding like exhausted, dehydrated, and just kind of like, oh my God, I missed this shot. I missed that shot. I could have done this. I could have done that if I had more time, or la la la. So like it really does burn people out after a while. And, I think a lot of us, like, our dream was to shoot weddings, but then for a lot of us too, we get burnt out on it. Right. And I think for the people that really value adventure and closer connections with their clients, weddings can also be a challenge because you don't always form close relationships. You're more of a vendor and you're one of many. So that's another thing that kind of burns people out, when your values don't kind of line up with that. And you're like, I really want to be friends with my clients. And that's another perk of being an elopement photographer, is that people are basically hiring you because they can see themselves being friends with you, or because they also want a connection with you. So yeah, so not only do elopements provide adventure and travel, but you can also have more connections with your couples, more time on an elopement day to like be creative and get all the shots that you want, and have more control over your calendar. You can really create the life that you want through booking elopements.
Yeah, and along those lines, you also have more control of the day. So like as Megan mentioned, you're kind of in the wedding scenario, you're more of a vendor, you show up, you may have some input on the timeline and like your designated time with the couple, but on the elopement side, it's going to be a much bigger production on your side to plan it, to orchestrate it, to guide that couple, whether they have guests or not. You're going to be in charge. And so that's a skill set that maybe you're more like attuned to working at, or something that maybe you need to build, as opposed to just kind of showing up and being the passive photographer, fly on the wall, capturing all the moments. Like, you're going to be in charge of directing the show. You also mentioned, and we kind of need to go back to, about like the hours. Yeah, weddings are long days for sure, but so are elopements. I mean, we're booking 8-hour elopements or 12-hour elopements, and so like those are full days that are exhausting because you're, either outside or hiking or moving. And, depending on the day, it's still a lot of hours and time on your feet that you're having to instruct and take photographs. So like, that's not just like an easy replacement, or like, oh, we go from long days to short days. It's not as easy as that, but it's just probably a different kind of more fulfilling time for you if you're looking into being an elopement photographer.
Yeah, the days are way more fun.
Yeah, definitely. And like, they don't seem like they don't drag on. I remember weddings just like continually looking at my clock, like counting the hours or the minutes down until like the next event or until I can go home. Whereas elopements are like more engaging, more fun. You're outside doing cool stuff that like maybe at least we relate more to.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, the elopements are going to be more what you connect with too.
Yeah, you have more control, and you're trying to attract people that you relate with more. And so the days end up being kind of like your ideal elopement days, because you're helping your ideal couples plan this day. So then at the end of 8 hours, like, yeah, you've been hiking or going to multiple places or talking with these people, but it's not as like socially and mentally exhausting, I feel like. Like at the end of an 8-hour day with our couples, we're like, why does it have to end? I wish it kept going. But yeah, on a wedding day, when it turns into the reception and I'm taking the same photos over and over and over again on the dance floor, and I'm like, literally just, I can't stop looking at my watch every 5 minutes. Like, when do I get to go home? And elopements don't have that feeling at all. So I think that there's a few blocks, like mindset blocks, that keep people in the wedding space, that keeps them from wanting to pivot into elopements. And one of those, I mean, there's many, but one of them is thinking that the elopement market is too small. And the wedding market is huge. I mean, it's still the normal way to get married, but the elopement market keeps growing and growing and growing. So there's room for all of us, especially for the people who like listen to this podcast and are going to do things the right way and not just like book elopements because they want to travel somewhere and they get free travel out of it or something. Like, I want people who are going to take really good care of their clients, and it's not about them or it's not about you. It's about the clients and their experience and making sure that it's amazing. I think a lot of photographers are also worried about what their past wedding clients are going to think, like, oh, if I switch over to elopements, like my past couples, who you still might have good relationships with. Not all wedding couples just treat you like a vendor. Many do still value you and cherish you and you can be friends with. But yeah, they're going to be excited for you. If you pivot to elopements, they're not going to be like, oh, it's because she hated my wedding or something. No, they're going to support you if they're worth anything, like they're going to be happy for you if you're making a change in your life that is going to make you happy. Like, don't worry about what they think. And they probably don't think anything about it anyway. And I think a lot of people also think that the real money is in weddings and that couples that are eloping are just trying to do it on the cheap. And I see that on social media all the time too, where people are like, they've commented on my ads when I'm running an ad that's like, learn how to book your first $5,000 elopement or something. And people will comment. I always delete them because who needs negativity, right? But people will comment and be like, nobody's paying $5,000. They're trying to elope because it's cheaper. But yeah, there are people who are eloping because it's cheap and they don't care about the photography. But there's also couples who are eloping because they value the experience and photography is the most important part of their experience. Like, yeah, they're excited to get married and adventure and elope, but like the last couple we talked to, photos were like, we got to have amazing photos.
Yeah, because not all the guests are going to be there. Not all the friends, all the family, like the old grandparents can't necessarily make it. So like they want to still provide and share what their elopement or their wedding day was like. And so, yeah, there is a large population of couples that do value it and will spend an appropriate amount of money to elope with a photographer. That opens up a lot of funds if you're not having to pay for flowers for 8 bridesmaids or a venue or feeding hundreds of people. There's money to be spent and there's money to be earned as an elopement photographer for sure.
Hey photographer, do you dream of having a successful elopement photography business but don't know where to start? Imagine having the confidence to double or triple your prices, booking your calendar solid with dream couples and breathtaking locations, and feeling genuinely stoked about your business, your life, and your bank account? Then I'd like to introduce you to Stoked Academy, the go-to membership community for adventure elopement photographers that are ready to scale their businesses to 6 figures and beyond, all without hustling on social media. In Stoked Academy, you'll get access to everything you need to build a 6-figure business, like mastering marketing strategies, pricing for profit, elopement planning, worksheets, templates, spreadsheets, and so much more. Plus, you'll connect with a positive, supportive community of elopement photographers who are as passionate as you are. And the best part? It's insanely affordable, like less than the cost of a new memory card for your camera. Plus, as a member, you'll get to join me for a monthly group coaching call where we dive deep into strategies that will take your business to the next level. If this sounds awesome, then head over to stokedacademy.com to learn more about the membership and join us. I can't wait to see you in there. Yeah, just think of the couples that, they get engaged and they start looking into a traditional wedding and they start piling up the costs. And I think the Knot says like the average wedding is like $30,000 or something like that. But really, I mean, you shot a wedding that was like $350,000 and it was like still not even that nice.
It was but crazy over the top, ridiculous things were bought and money was squandered.
Yeah. I mean,
probably just for the sake of squandering and spending money.
Yeah. I mean, couples are going to start looking at venues. They're going to get florists who are like, yeah, my minimum is $12,000. They're going to start reaching out about bar packages and food and stuff like that. And then they're looking at like $100K wedding. I mean, that's what a big party that looks nice is going to cost probably at the minimum. So then when they start thinking about traveling someplace cool and hiring a photographer, $5,000 or $8,000, that looks like a pretty good freaking deal. So we definitely have to kind of rewrite this idea in our heads that there's no money in elopements. Elopements are cheap, the market is too small or too crowded, or I have to shoot weddings to make money. Like, we got to get rid of all those. Those are just stories you're telling yourself that aren't true. So really, if you want to start booking elopements, you got to start marketing yourself to couples that want to elope. And they are a very different market than couples having a traditional wedding. They need different things. A couple booking a wedding photographer might just be looking for somebody who lives near their venue that has pretty photos, you know?
And maybe shot at that venue before, maybe worked with their planner before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when it comes to booking an elopement photographer, then it's like, okay, I need somebody who's knowledgeable about doing this, because it sounds easy to just go out in the middle of nowhere and get married, but there's actually a lot of logistics that couples don't understand. So they need somebody knowledgeable. They need somebody that they can connect with. They need to understand your personality and your values, and they need cool photos. But that's only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to eloping couples. So they want to see photos that don't involve receptions and bridesmaids and, you know, bridal parties and venues.
And the typical garter tosses and all
Oh,
the
yeah.
cheesy stuff that probably goes along with most weddings. Not necessarily, but yeah.
Yeah. Most eloping couples do not care about that cheesy stuff, you know, like they might do a first dance or something like that, but they're all unique. That's the other thing with eloping couples. They all have kind of a unique vision. And so marketing to them is just much different than marketing to weddings. So you may have been able to get away with posting pretty photos and just having your pricing on your website and getting word of mouth bookings, or somebody who is a bridesmaid in one of your past weddings, or a planner recommended you or something like that. But with elopements, you don't have that. You know, there isn't really that much word of mouth marketing going on, and you're dealing with a completely different clientele.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to touch on in the marketing side is like, from an elopement standpoint, you are going to be the go-to vendor, like the first vendor and maybe the only vendor that a couple hires. And so you're going to have to do all of the heavy lifting from the marketing standpoint, as opposed to, relying on previous venues or previous planners, bridesmaids, that type of like more social connection or social network of vendors to get in front of brides and grooms. That's going to fall directly on you at this point if you're going to go in the elopement route.
Yeah. And so before you start updating everything, it might be worth either shooting an elopement if you haven't before. I think that's how a lot of people do get into elopements, though, is they have one-off random elopement that they book and they fall in love with it. You know, they just have the best time and they're like, oh man, if only I could book more of these and less weddings, that would be ideal. Or you have your favorite photographers on Instagram and you just like pine over what they get to shoot and where they get to go and stuff like that. But one of the things that you could do to update your portfolio is to do some styled shoots. And I really recommend planning your own. And we have a whole podcast episode about it. But if you plan your own, you're going to get experience with elopement planning, because there's a lot of overlap when it comes to doing your own styled shoot, making sure that your couple is happy, you know, like figuring out the logistics of the day, you know, maybe making some mistakes. I think one of my past mastermind members forgot to bring food and water, and they had just been without food and water for a long time. So people got a little hangry, and she's like, oh, I'm always going to bring water and snacks from now on. Like, make those mistakes during a styled shoot. And then you can also update your portfolio, because having a website full of wedding photos is not going to attract eloping couples. They're going to click right off, right? So you need to have elopement style photos on your website. And you also need the copy on your website to be more elopement focused, because again, you're not just winning people over based on your photos alone. You also have to share your knowledge, even if you're like faking it till you make it, you know? And you also have to share your personality. And then the way you're going to get eloping couples to find you is going to be different than how a lot of people market their wedding photography business. You're going to have to utilize things like SEO and Google Ads and Pinterest. That's where the majority of our clients get their bookings, because you can't rely on word of mouth and bridesmaids and groomsmen and whoever else you kind of find. And then you also have to adjust your pricing, because one of the things that does attract cheap elopements and has people thinking that there's no money in elopements is because the only package they have to offer is like a $1,000, $1,500 2-hour elopement package. And there's a lot of people who are going to see that and bounce because that's not what they want. They actually want to invest in the experience. They want to do a full day elopement. These couples exist. And what Todd talked about before, you can book weddings and elopements together. I did that for several years where I really did half weddings, half elopements. But it was really when I committed to being an elopement photographer that I started booking my ideal clients and bigger packages and more cool elopements that really just felt like being with friends. I was getting paid well. And so really going all in is the biggest difference, because I think when people kind of have like one foot in the wedding world and one foot in the elopement world, your marketing message gets a little jumbled because there's two completely different markets. It's like people always tell you to niche down, right? You've probably heard like
The riches are in the niches.
yeah, you should niche down. And really what that comes down to, like you can photograph anything you want. You don't have to just pick one thing or another. Like if you love newborns or boudoir or equestrian photography or something, you can still do those things. The problem is in the marketing, because the clients are so different and they need to see different things and hear different things in order to book you. That's the problem. So if you're not talking to a specific person in your marketing, like on your website, in your blog posts, on your social media and the captions and stuff like that, you're not going to book them. So that's where things can get a little jumbled, is when you're trying to talk to wedding couples and elopement couples. It can be done. It's just challenging. So when you commit, that's really where the magic happens, when you go all in. Because the people doing the half weddings, half elopements, a lot of times it's like, I would do all elopements if I could. I just don't think I can. And I love to use the skiing analogy because it is ski season and it made a huge difference for me. And I was like, this is like business. But somebody told me, a ski instructor was like, because I was working on my turns, because even though Todd's an amazing skier, my dad's an amazing skier, my brother's an amazing skier, I am not. I'm very scared of skiing, even though I love it. I'm very scared. And so when I was first working on my turns, going back and forth, when you start making a turn in skiing, you speed up. And that's scary because you don't want to go fast yet. You're a beginner, you know? So I would kind of like lean back and get a little squirrely and unsure of myself. And then inevitably I'd fall or the turn would just be awful. And I'd kind of like reinforce this idea of like, oh, I'm such a bad skier. But the ski instructor told me to like visualize the turn and commit to the turn. And like when you commit, realize you're going to speed up and that's just going to happen. But if you're committed to it and you don't wobble and kind of like lean back and get afraid, then you'll have a perfect little turn. So that's what I was like, I'm going to commit. And that's when I started doing good turns. And that's what I see too with photographers, is when they're scared and they're just starting out and they start turning and that goes a little bit fast and they freak out and lean back. And it's kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, I can't go all in even though I want to, but it's really going all in and committing that works. So if you have a website with all elopement or elopement style photos and you have the website copy and the blog posts and you're talking all about elopements and you have packages for elopement couples, you will book more elopements than if you just throw in a little blurb about, and I do elopements, you know, but have everything else talking to wedding photographers. That's where people will get stuck working with cheap couples that don't really value photography and think like, oh, I have to keep shooting weddings because this is where the money is and nobody wants a big, cool elopement, but it's really just your marketing is missing the mark. So when I fully committed, not to skiing, but to booking elopements, and I fully committed to booking 8-hour elopement days minimum and being the best elopement photographer I could be, that's when everything clicked into place and everything took off and my dreams came true. because being an elopement photographer is one of the best jobs in the world. And I see that all the time with wedding photographers who want to make the switch and they're terrified to. So they just dabble in it a little bit and it doesn't work out. You can't always just dabble. You might get the occasional cool booking, but you can't base your income on that, right? So if you're considering pivoting to elopements, if you're sick and tired of weddings, you can pivot to elopements. You can make a good living. You can be successful. You can have everything that you want. You can have your weekends off to hang with friends or family or kids or dogs or husbands, or go skiing or whatever you want to do. It's all possible. You have to stop telling yourself the stories you tell yourself with why you can't make it work. And if you do want to just kind of dip your foot in it a little bit, that's why I made Stoked Academy. That's why I made it affordable so that you can start kind of working on these things without a huge investment and start getting the ball rolling, because elopements are where it's at, man. Right?
So much more fun and enjoyable and fulfilling than shooting weddings, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So thanks so much for listening. We will see you next week. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Stoked. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring elopement photography content, check us out on Instagram at Megan McPhail. And if you'd like to hear more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you hit six figures as an elopement photographer, then check out my website at www.meganmcphail.com.